President Donald Trump has just issued a definitive statement from Florida. The excursion in Iran is nearing its completion. Addressing a Republican conference, Trump claimed that Iran should have cried uncle 2 days ago, and that the military campaign will be finished pretty quickly. He told CBS News that the U.S.-Israeli coalition is very far ahead of schedule, citing the total destruction of the Iranian Navy, communications, and Air Force. But as the smoke rises over Tehran, the market isn't buying the quick victory narrative. While oil prices dropped 30% on the headline of a soon-to-be-over war, the physical reality on the ground tells a story of sustained escalation. Trump is betting his political capital on a swift exit, but with an 8th U.S. soldier confirmed killed and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard vowing a fight to the end, we are auditing a gap between White House messaging and battlefield reality that could trigger the next global shock. According to U.S. CENTCOM, Operation Epic Fury has already struck over 5,000 Iranian targets and destroyed or damaged 50 naval ships. Trump's assessment is that there is nothing left in a military sense. However, this mission-complete rhetoric mirrors the early days of previous conflicts that turned into decade-long liabilities. If the war is pretty much complete, why is Senator Lindsey Graham reporting the evacuation of the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh due to sustained Iranian attacks? The ledger doesn't balance. I'm Camilo Motato, reporting for Thu News. As a certified public accountant, I look at project timelines and completion percentages. In any audit, if a project manager claims a task is 90% done while the main factory is still on fire, I have to flag it as a material misstatement. Today, we are auditing the Iran excursion. We are looking at a president who calls a full-scale regional war an excursion, a term used to minimize the perceived cost. But with the Revolutionary Guard mobilizing 600,000 irregular Basij militia members and new strikes hitting Bahrain and Israel, the short-term label is a high-risk accounting maneuver. Trump's claim that Iran should have surrendered 2 days ago reveals a fundamental miscalculation of resolve. As a CPA, I track operational durability. The Iranian regime was built to withstand external shocks. The Revolutionary Guard, created in 1979 specifically to safeguard the revolutionary system, bypasses conventional armed forces and reports directly to the supreme leader. Trump says they have nothing left, but the Revolutionary Guard still commands 190,000 active-duty troops who benefit most from the status quo. They would rather fight than switch, and their command structure is designed for emergency war orders that grant units autonomy even when central communications are down. Trump's comments cause oil to drop rapidly from its overnight highs, but the G7 is still closely monitoring energy markets. This is what we call market manipulation through rhetoric. By signaling an end to the war, Trump is trying to cool a global wave of inflation that threatens the U.S. economy. But the Iranian Foreign Ministry has already shut the door on ceasefire talks, accusing the U.S. of seeking the partition of their country to take possession of its oil riches. If the excursion doesn't end as quickly as Trump pledges, the market rebound in oil prices will be even more violent, creating a strategic debt that the U.S. taxpayer will have to settle at the pump. The stability ledger of the Iranian regime underwent a massive shift on Monday. Despite a week of heavy bombardment aimed at destabilizing the government, Tehran has showcased its continuity by formally elevating Mojtaba Khamenei as the new supreme leader. As a CPA, I track succession risks, and this is a classic case of hardline consolidation. Mojtaba, at 56, is not just the son of the slain Ayatollah. He is a veteran of the Iran-Iraq War with deep ties to the Revolutionary Guard. His appointment signals a fight-to-the-end strategy that completely contradicts Trump's excursion narrative. Trump has already voiced his disapproval, calling the choice of Mojtaba a big mistake and labeling him a lightweight. Trump insisted that he must be involved in the appointment, comparing the situation to his intervention in Venezuela. From an auditing perspective, this is strategic interference. You cannot demand an unconditional surrender while simultaneously trying to act as the HR manager for your adversary's leadership. This has only emboldened the Iranian elite, including the 190,000 active-duty Revolutionary Guard troops, who now view the war as an existential struggle for their national identity. We must audit the internal allegiances that keep the Iranian state functioning under fire. The Revolutionary Guard and the political elite have pledged total allegiance to Mojtaba Khamenei. This is crucial because in the Iranian ledger, the Revolutionary Guard is the primary safeguard of the system. The Revolutionary Guard operates its own domestic security force, the Basij militia, which can mobilize roughly 600,000 members. While Trump claims they have nothing left in a military sense, the Revolutionary Guard is a decentralized entity designed to survive external shocks. They benefit most from the status quo and would rather fight than switch. Trump's insistence on a quick exit ignores the fact that his opponent has just doubled down on a confrontational hardline stance. There is a massive valuation gap in how both sides view the timeline of this conflict. Trump tells CBS the war is very far ahead of schedule. Yet the Iranian Foreign Ministry has warned that as long as military aggression continues, there is little room to talk about anything other than a decisive response. As a professional auditor, I see this as a contingent liability for the American taxpayer. Trump claims he will make Iran economically bigger, better, and stronger than ever before once the excursion is over. But you cannot build a nation that you are currently smashing. U.S. officials are already distancing themselves from the weekend attacks on Iranian oil facilities, fearing the global shock. If the war doesn't end pretty quickly, as Trump pledges, the cost of bringing Iran back from the brink will be an astronomical figure that has not been accounted for in any current U.S. budget. Finally, we must address the operational control of the world's most vital energy choke point. Trump pledged to make the Strait of Hormuz safe, but he offered no details on a military entry to ensure free passage. In accounting, a promise without a specific action plan is a hollow asset. Iran still maintains its door-closing threats and accuses the U.S. of seeking the partition of the country to seize its oil riches. While oil dropped 30% on Trump's "over-soon" rhetoric, that drop is based on trust, not on physical security. If one more U.S.-owned tanker, like the one recently hit near Kuwait, is struck, that 30% drop will evaporate, leaving the global market in a state of terminal insolvency. While President Trump is signaling a quick off-ramp to the American public, the human capital ledger of this conflict continues to bleed. CENTCOM has officially confirmed the death of an 8th U.S. service member since Operation Epic Fury began. This follows a dignified transfer ceremony at Dover Air Force Base, where the president himself was present. As a CPA, I track sunk costs and escalation of commitment. When a project manager tells the shareholders the job is pretty much complete, but the maintenance costs and human lives are still rising, there is a fundamental audit failure. Fox News has even come under fire for its handling of this coverage, reflecting a growing domestic tension over the true price of this excursion. If the Iranian military is truly down to a scatter, as Trump claims, why are American soldiers still dying in a theater that is supposedly far ahead of schedule? The most alarming indicator of regional instability isn't coming from Tehran, but from America's closest allies. Senator Lindsey Graham has confirmed that the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh is being evacuated due to sustained Iranian attacks against the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. This is a massive strategic default on regional security. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry reports that Iranian attacks have continued based on baseless claims that the kingdom is hosting U.S. refueling aircraft for the war. Despite an earlier apology from President Pezeshkian, the Revolutionary Guard is clearly overriding any civilian olive branch. When you have to evacuate your embassy in the capital of your primary regional energy partner, you aren't winning an excursion. You are managing a systemic liquidation of your regional influence. While Trump talks about a quick exit, the war is expanding geographically into a second front in Lebanon. Multiple Israeli airstrikes have struck the southern suburbs of Beirut, targeting financial institutions linked to Hezbollah. Hezbollah has reported fighting Israeli forces that landed in eastern Lebanon by helicopter, the second such operation across the Syrian border. As a professional auditor, I see a misalignment of objectives between Washington and Tel Aviv. Trump wants a politically expedient moment to declare victory and get out before the midterms. However, Israel appears willing to smash an entire Iranian nation to ensure long-term security, a goal that could take months or years, not weeks. Lebanon's request for direct peace talks has already been rejected by Israel, with significant U.S. skepticism. This is a contractual divergence where the lead partner, the U.S., is looking for an exit, while the junior partner, Israel, is expanding the scope of the project into a total regional restructuring. Finally, we must audit the technical impairment of U.S. assets. A spokesman for the Iranian armed forces claims to have targeted and destroyed 4 radars of the U.S. THAAD system in the past hours. In accounting, the loss of high-end equipment is a capital expenditure loss that is rarely reported in real time. A THAAD battery is a billion-dollar asset. If Iran is successfully degrading these impenetrable systems, the air umbrella protecting the Gulf is losing its service life faster than it can be replaced. Trump says they have nothing left, but if they are still hitting THAAD radars and desalination plants in Bahrain, the excursion is far from over. Beyond the military targets, Operation Epic Fury has created a massive environmental liability that is currently being ignored by the White House. Weekend strikes on 30 Iranian fuel depots have sent toxic smoke and oil-infused rain across Tehran, a city of over 9 million people. Iranian officials claim the strikes were timed deliberately ahead of rainfall to contaminate drinking water supplies. As a CPA, I categorize this as a contingent remediation cost. Trump has pledged to work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink and make it economically bigger and better. However, the cost of decontaminating the water table of a major metropolis and rebuilding thousands of destroyed energy sites is an unfunded mandate. In any nation-building project, if you destroy the basic environmental solvency of the region, the restoration liability often exceeds the total value of the original assets. In an unusual move, President Trump posted on social media calling for Australia to give asylum to the Iran national women's soccer team. While it remains unclear if the entire team is requesting it or just individuals, this represents an attempt to manage the social capital of the conflict. From an auditing perspective, this is a strategic diversion. By focusing on a humanitarian gesture for a sports team, the administration is attempting to offset the negative goodwill generated by the reports of 1,205 civilian deaths, including 194 children. As a professional, I look at the materiality of this move. Rescuing a soccer team does not balance the ledger of a war that has killed over 1,400 people across the region in just 1 week. The future of Harg Island, Iran's primary oil export terminal, remains the most significant high-value asset at risk. While Trump says it is too soon to talk about seizing Iran's oil, he has notably refused to rule it out. This is a liquidity threat to China. Beijing is still receiving some of its oil from this terminal. Any attempt by the US to take illegal possession of these oil riches, as the Iranian Foreign Ministry has accused, would likely trigger a direct response from China. As a CPA, I track third-party interests. You cannot seize the primary collateral of a major global power's energy supply without expecting a default on international trade stability. Trump's rhetoric has shifted from a military excursion to a moral crusade, calling Iran evil while simultaneously promising to bring harmony and peace. He dismissed Mojtaba Khamenei as a lightweight and insisted that he must be involved in the appointment of the next cleric, much like his involvement in Venezuela. This is what we call conflicting management directives. You cannot declare an entity evil and demand its unconditional surrender while also claiming you want to help it become stronger than ever before. The Iranian elite, particularly the Revolutionary Guard, has already pledged allegiance to the new leader, signaling that they see through this nation-smashing disguised as nation-building. The audit of intent shows that the US and Israeli aims may be diverging. Washington wants a quick exit ramp, while Israel is prepared for a fight to the end. As we conclude this forensic look at the second week of war, we must audit the most volatile line item in the global ledger: energy prices. On Monday, oil dropped rapidly, falling 30% from its overnight highs, following President Trump's comments that the war could be over soon. As a CPA, I classify this as sentiment-driven volatility. The market is desperate for an off-ramp, and it reacted to Trump's rhetoric rather than the physical reality of the burned fuel depots in Tehran. However, we must look at the basis of valuation. While Trump calls the 25% surge in prices a very small price to pay for destroying the Iranian nuclear threat, the G7 is still in emergency monitoring mode, ready to release oil stockpiles. If the excursion does not end pretty quickly as pledged, the market will realize it has been trading on a hollow asset of hope. The current 30% drop is a fragile correction in what remains a high-risk inflationary environment. The most damning evidence against a short-term excursion is the collapse of diplomatic negotiations. Lebanon has requested direct peace talks with Israel to end the fighting on the second front, but Israel has rejected the proposal amid US skepticism. Simultaneously, Iran has shut the door on ceasefire possibilities, stating that as long as military aggression continues, there is no room for diplomacy. From an auditing perspective, this is a negotiation impasse. Trump is signaling a decision will only be made after a mutual consultation with Netanyahu, but their war aims appear to be diverging. Washington wants a quick victory to cool the economy, while the Israeli military apparatus is expanding ground operations inside Lebanon and hitting financial institutions. You cannot have an exit strategy if your primary partner is still expanding the project scope. Perhaps the most significant unrecorded liability is the potential for U.S. ground intervention. Reports suggest Trump is weighing the option of deploying special forces to seize Iran's near-bomb-grade uranium. This would move the excursion from a high-altitude bombing campaign to a high-stakes ground operation. In accounting, this is a contingent operational risk of the highest order. A ground mission into the Iranian heartland would immediately invalidate the short-term narrative and could trigger the protracted conflict that analysts are now predicting. The appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei, a veteran of the Iran-Iraq War, proves that Tehran is prepared for a fight to the end, not a surrender. The final audit of Operation Epic Fury on March 9, 2026, reveals a world in strategic insolvency. President Trump has pledged a quick end to a war that has already killed 1,400 people, displaced an entire soccer team, and contaminated the water supply of 9 million civilians. He calls it an excursion, but the Revolutionary Guard calls it a war of partition. As a CPA, my verdict is that the mission complete banner is being raised over a burning ledger. You cannot bring Iran back from the brink while your bombs are pushing it over the edge. The 30% drop in oil is a temporary audit adjustment, but the underlying debt of chaos is still accumulating interest. But the final question remains for you. Do you believe the war is very far ahead of schedule, or are we being sold a market correction while the real regional war is just beginning? Is a soccer team's asylum worth the black rain falling over Tehran? Let me know in the comments below. Your perspective is the only audit that matters when the world is being treated like a real estate deal. I'm Camilo Motato, certified public accountant for Thu News. Thank you for staying for this 20-minute deep dive into the excursion that changed the world. Subscribe, stay informed, and stay safe.